Well, welcome to the 700 Club, folks. In the news, I'm sure you've seen the headlines. The president has had a couple of aides. Years ago, there was a firm called Black, Manafort, and Stone. They were the Republican gurus in terms of election politics, and they were very good at it. And Paul Manafort has gone on to become a fixer, and apparently he has gained a lot of money and wasn't paying taxes on it. So he has been convicted in a jury in Virginia, and Trump's other fixer named Cohen apparently paid some money. Now, paying money to somebody and violating an election law isn't a big deal because it's got to be settled by the Federal Election Commission. But we'll be talking about that and whether he's implicating the president and whether this means it's going to be anything. Did the president tell Cohen to pay off these women? And if he did, what violation did he commit? We'll be talking about that on today's program. All right.
And Pat, it's still not clear what this all means for the president legally. The political fallout, though, could be costly. Charlene Aaron has the story.
Former Trump attorney Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to 8 counts of violating campaign finance rules by paying hush money to 2 women who claimed affairs with Trump.
Mr. Cohen pled guilty to 2 campaign finance charges, both for the purpose of influencing the 2016 election.
11 days before the election, Cohen paid off porn star Stormy Daniels, who claimed she had a one-night stand with Trump. The president initially said he knew nothing about it.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
Cohen said in federal court Tuesday that he made the payments in coordination and at the direction of a candidate for federal office. It's not clear if Trump broke the law, and legal experts say it would be hard to prove in court. But Cohen's lawyer, Lanny Davis, told MSNBC,
it was a crime for President Trump to direct Michael Cohen to the crime of a campaign finance donation that exceeded the legal limitations.
But Politico points out the documents outlining Cohen's plea deal don't appear to provide any examples or evidence that Trump directed Cohen to do anything. And the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, said there was no allegation of any wrongdoing against the president. But legal experts say there could be problems for the president if he is heard on tape directing Cohen to pay the women with campaign funds. Cohen's guilty plea could add to Democratic calls to impeach the president. Legal analysts say a sitting president cannot be indicted, but he can be impeached, which is a political, not a criminal response.
Violation of election laws are regarded as kind of jaywalking in the realm of things about elections, and there are so many of them. Every administration violates the election laws. Every candidate violates the election laws when they run for president.
Meanwhile, Cohen's guilty plea came at almost the same time that former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort was convicted of 8 financial crimes in a trial arising from special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, even though it has nothing to do with Russia collusion. But for now, the focus is clearly on Cohen's case and the implications it may or may not have for President Trump. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
You know, the federal election law is kind of opaque, but it was deliberately set up to be a stalemate. There are 3 Democrats and there are 3 Republicans. And so you've got to win one of the Republicans or one of the Democrats to do anything. And the penalties are pretty innocuous. So exceeding the campaign finance laws is not that big a deal because in order to get any kind of an action, the Federal Election Commission has got to act. And so they cannot act because the Congress deliberately set it up that way. But that's the way it goes in Washington. David Brody is our CBN News political analyst. And David, this is a mess. You didn't help the president any. Is there any thought that he might try to pardon Paul Manafort?
Well, there's talk about that here in Washington, Pat, but at this point, a lot of folks, at least in this parlor game that we know of Washington, D.C., they're saying pretty much no, that wouldn't probably make much sense, at least at this point. But, you know, things change in Trump world, as we've known. Look, this is a bit of a mess, for sure, for the president. But in terms of the legal jeopardy question here, and that's what everybody is wondering about, you know, was it a crime? And really, there's some mixed views on that. I would say this, that from a legal perspective, what we're understanding is that what is the intent? In other words, would President Trump, and here's the legal question a lot of folks are wondering, and this is the question that would need to be answered, would President Trump have done this anyhow if there wasn't a campaign? Well, there's been a history of paying off a few people along the way. And so, therefore, if it's personal, if it was to protect the marriage, Melania, things that were going on there, that's different than campaign finance reform and actually having a targeted reason to do so. So that's going to be the other potential shoe that could drop. We'll have to wait and see. It feels like a drip, drip, drip scenario here, Pat.
You know, it all started with a so-called investigation of Russian meddling in our election. And Mueller has that's his mandate. He doesn't have a mandate to investigate personal financial wrongdoing or violation of IRS statutes. So what are you hearing up there about his overreach, and that's what it amounts to?
Well, that's right. That word overreach that you just said there, Pat, is the key word. That has been repeated at the White House. Folks that are close to President Trump talking to sources that are close to the president this morning saying the same thing, that this is not only overreach, but they talk about Michael Cohen specifically and how Michael Cohen has a credibility problem. They say, you know, we've heard Rudy Giuliani say this, but let's remember Michael Cohen had said at one point early on that Donald Trump knew nothing about any sort of payment, and now apparently he knew all about the payment and was directing it to go to, you know, from a campaign finance reform perspective, go into the campaign. So, look, they're going to point to his credibility, and that's going to be obviously a linchpin of all of this. As for Russian collusion, Pat, nothing on Manafort, nothing on Michael Cohen. The one concern, clearly, at the White House is what else does Michael Cohen potentially know? And I know they talk about a credibility problem with Cohen, but we hear now that Michael Cohen might have some information about this DNC hacking situation that took place. And did Trump know about it before it actually happened? Lanny Davis, Michael Cohen's attorney, suggesting that that could be the case. We'll have to wait and see.
How about this impeachment stuff? You know, it would almost be impossible to impeach a president, but the House may try it if it switches. What do you hear about that?
There's no doubt about it. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats won't talk about impeachment before the midterm elections, but they'll talk a lot about it after, for sure, if they win control of the House of Representatives. And that's, I don't want to say that's the plan, but that's kind of the blueprint, if you will, to go after this president. Look, they were going to go after him anyhow, but now with Michael Cohen's plea deal, that's the linchpin. That's the center of all of this. If you've got Michael Cohen saying that the president directly told Michael Cohen to make this payment, in essence breaking campaign finance laws. You can imagine what the Democrats are going to do with that. And remember, Pat, if the Democrats take control, and you know this, but if the Democrats take control, what happens? They have subpoena power. They're the ones in control, not Republicans, and that's not good news for President Trump.
Well, last thing, of course, the Republicans tried to impeach President Clinton, Bill Clinton, and they got an impeachment motion through the House, but it failed in the Senate. So I think, what are people saying? I mean, it really didn't go anywhere, and Clinton stayed in office.
Well, they don't have 67 votes anywhere near it in the Senate is what they'll need. They would need 2/3 in the Senate, as you know, Pat, and it's just not there. So once again, just back to 101, you can impeach a president in the House like what happened to Bill Clinton, but you have to convict him in the Senate, and you'd have to have 2/3, 67 votes. They don't have that. Now, having said that, the worst case scenario is what happened to, obviously, Richard Nixon at the time, where he basically lost the Republican Party, and they ditched him, and at that point, he was in all sorts of problems, and he had to resign. Now, the question then becomes, how many Republicans will ditch President Trump if this thing gets worse? And that we just don't know right now.
David, thank you so much for that insight. Well, in other news, folks, on the heels of yet another cyber attack from Russia this week, a Senate committee took up the issue of protecting our critical infrastructure from cyber hackers. As CBN's national security correspondent Erik Rosales shows us, the senators fear America is not ready to defend itself against such a targeted attack.
The threats to our critical infrastructure like power and water treatment plants are real, and senators say the public has no clue how bad it is.
America is under cyber attack. We're beginning to act, but not quick enough and not forcefully enough.
Now, occasionally the hackers are foreign government individuals, but sometimes those governments are also hiring freelance hackers to also do their bidding.
Senators from both sides say more communication must take place, not just to inform the public, but between privately owned companies and the government. With nearly 90% of all U.S. critical infrastructure privately owned, Senator Lindsey Graham offered up the idea of rewarding companies that work together with Homeland Security and other federal agencies on cybersecurity.
How about immunity from lawsuits? If you'll do what's best in your industry, we will protect you from being sued.
Yes, sir. I think that's a great idea.
How about some carrots on the table? Because I don't think DHS can regulate this.
Democratic Senator from Rhode Island, Sheldon Whitehouse, brought up a controversial idea, hacking back, which allows the victim of a cyber attack to go on the offensive and hack the adversary.
I think Senator Graham's focus on sanctions against the oligarchs is exactly the right way to solve this. If you want to deter Vladimir Putin, whack him right in the oligarchs.
Security experts say we need to get ideas from our allies.
Israel is attacked by Iran and Hezbollah every week in efforts to use cyber tools to disrupt their critical infrastructure. So far, they've been able to beat them off. But if I was worried about a non-state actor, I would worry about Hezbollah first.
Security experts have warned that retaliation in cyberspace present a serious risk and escalate quickly, especially with hackers backed by foreign governments. Erik Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
You know, we've been on this program saying over and over again how critical this is. If a cyber attack can do it, or if an EMP blast, wherever it comes from, whether it's from a airborne nuclear explosion, whether it's from the sun, wherever it comes from, our infrastructure is at risk. And I'm telling you, if the lights go out, folks, in this country, millions will die. We're not talking about something that's, you know, a minor threat. This is a major threat. And these power grids are tied together. And many times, if one goes out, it can take it down a whole chain of them. So this is something that Congress needs to get its act together right now. And they need to spend some serious money. There needs to be like a czar who knows what he's doing about energy and gets in there and fixes this thing immediately. And then we talk about cyber later on. But right now, just harden the infrastructure so that they're not as vulnerable to whatever type of explosion, EMP blast, cyber attack, et cetera, whatever happens, so that we will not be without electricity. Because if we are, it's going to be devastating. And we're not talking about a whole lot of money. I mean, when you look at a multi-trillion-dollar economy, a few $100 billion, it sounds, in the old days, it sounded like an awful lot of money. Now it's not. But a few billion would fix it. And we've got to do something. And I might add also that I'm thrilled that Regent University, for example, is offering now a marvelous course in cybersecurity. And companies like Maersk, which is bringing their employees, their top men from all around the world, are coming here to Tidewater, to Regent University, to get trained in cyber security. Right. We have a situation where it's like a plane where you can get training in a type of aircraft.
A simulator?
Simulator. Well, we can simulate a cyber attack. We can simulate how to respond to it and what to do. And so people are coming to that. And I might add, if you're interested, Regent is giving a degree in cybersecurity, and they're giving certificates in cybersecurity. The number is available. It's there on your screen, 866-910-7615. And many people, I know the Navy intelligence is using it, has already had one class go through. They've booked 12 more sessions for their top officials to learn how to do that. And we have, it's a cyber range that's just superb. It's the state of the art. It's right here at Regent University.
I just hope we don't have to have a disaster before lawmakers will do something. Sometimes, you know, they'll be proactive, like you're sounding the alarm right now.
Well, they won't. They just won't. Yeah. For some reason, this hasn't risen to the top of the pile, and there isn't a constituency in America for this particular thing. And I don't think the power company officials are alarmed enough about what can happen. I'm sure they're sitting back and say, well, everything's cool. Well, it's not cool. And it's very dangerous. And the amount of money, again, folks, is so minuscule in rate of the trillions of dollars we spend in this nation. So, okay, I've sounded like Paul Revere, the British are coming quick.